Welcome in to Stop the Takes. Austin and Dakota here, live on YouTube at our regularly scheduled programming time, Thursdays almost at 7. This will probably
Almost.
get progressively earlier and earlier as we learn how long it takes to do these shows, basically. So today is what we've been hyping up for a while. We did our full 2025 season preview for the NFL last Thursday, predicting division standings, playoff seeding, Super Bowl matchup, award winners, and all of that. And now goes into what we'll be doing on a weekly basis, which is week preview shows on Thursdays, leading you into Thursday night football. And then Sundays, we'll be recapping Thursday night football and the Sunday slate, leading you into Sunday night football. So today starts that, Austin.
Yep.
NFL football is here. We've
Let's
gotten a
go,
taste
man.
of college football over the past 2 weeks, and now we finally have NFL football here.
Yep. Time to preview every matchup this week. It's going to be fun to get into it. And NFL is back, dude. Let's go. We finally got football back, real football. We were both tired of preseason after the first week, so ready for some NFL regular season action.
Yeah, the preseason was cool for like the first 20 minutes, as most people were like, we get excited to have football back, and then the quality of football is not there. And honestly, I love college football, but there's been some very sloppy football
Yes.
over the last 2 weeks. So I'm ready
Yes.
for some high quality product on the field. So without further ado, man, let's jump right into this with tonight's game.
Let's go.
The defending Super Bowl champion Eagles start their reign at home tonight against the Dallas Cowboys, who are fresh off of trading their best defensive player away. What are the things you're paying attention to in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of the bigger storylines. How does this Dallas defense look without Micah Parsons, specifically the defensive line? Are they going to be able to get that pass rush with just a bunch of dudes, right? It's just a bunch of dudes, some young players like Donovan Ezeraku, Dante Fowler, several guys like that aren't really dominant pass rushers like Micah Parsons, right? They're going to be missing that going forward. Also, from a Dallas perspective, I'm looking at the O-line, man. That O-line has a ton of question marks on it, with Tyler Guyton and Tyler Booker in particular. That Tyler Booker versus Jalen Carter matchup is one I've got circled. Like it's gonna be tough. That's a tough way to debut in the NFL for Tyler Booker. And then a last thing I'm looking at is, or not the last thing, but one of the last things I'm looking at is George Pickens added to that offense with CeeDee Lamb. Going to be interested to see how those guys mesh together. Really, the first time in Pickens' career, he's going to be the number 2. Gets to be the number 2, which might unlock him a little bit. So, intrigued to see how that goes.
Yeah, I think the trenches, I mean, that's a common theme in just football, right? It's just winning in the trenches. But this is a very interesting one with the Cowboys' rebuilt offensive line with all the Tylers, and then the Cowboys' defensive line lacking. When you looked at it on paper before the Micah Parsons trade, you were like, okay, this is a pretty good defensive line. You're gonna be able to compete relatively well with it. And now looking at it post Micah's looking a little bleak. And I know Jerry has emphasized their goal is to stop the run, but unfortunately, you also still need to rush the passer, and that's what you're now lacking. And you and I were both high on Donovan Ezeraku, so excited to see him get a chance to play earlier. And Marshawn Nealand has also been a guy that has been pretty impactful in the limited sample size he's gotten so far in his career there. And then I'm curious to see the Pickens CD connection or duo also against these two second-year corners. Quinyon and Cooper DeJean both looked pretty good last year.
They did.
They looked borderline elite right out of the gate, which is corners usually a pretty tough position to do that. If you look at guys even like Denzel Ward with Cleveland, who's now solidified himself as a solid corner, even Derek Stingley Jr., their rookie seasons, first 2 weren't great. Sauce was one of the ones that come in immediately. Pat was a little bit better. But what Quinyon and Cooper did last year was pretty impressive. So that's one of those interesting matchups where you had them in the division with good corners and a good secondary. You add George Pickens to this receiving crew, and I'm interested to see how they match up against those corners on the outside.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. Just from an Eagles perspective, man, I just expect more of the same, right? This is still the best roster in the NFL. They're going to control the game with long sustained drives, with that push play, and hit some deep shots with AJ and Devontae. Yeah, I expect the Eagles to be the Eagles. It's really like the new look Cowboys. How do the Cowboys look in the trenches is going to be intriguing in this game.
Yeah, and the Eagles obviously have a new right guard coming in with Tyler Steen, and they also had to replace their offensive coordinator. They now have Kevin Patullo, who I think was the QB coach or passing game coordinator last year. So they promoted from within, and we'll see how the offense looks. I suspect with that much talent on it, you're not going to notice a much difference. He's been in the system. He knows Jalen Hurts' strengths. He knows the strengths of the guys on that offense and Saquon. So I don't expect the offense to miss a beat. And then Vic Fangio on the defense side. I think Super Bowl champs are in good hands. The roster still looks really good, and yeah, we'll see how the Cowboys match up against them there. So we will be picking our games against the spread, and we're getting these from Sleeper. Just so you know, we're using the Sleeper app. If you're not, kind of cool where you can actually create a little pick 'em with your friends and pick against the spread or just outright. So for the sake of our show, we're going to be doing it against the spread. So
not sponsored, by the way.
Not sponsored. Yeah,
we just like Sleeper.
We'll get there one day. I thought about putting it on, to be honest, on the overlay of like the production team did of putting like betting lines by Sleeper with the logo, and I was like, nah, they don't deserve it yet.
No,
they gotta pay up for that.
Yeah, for sure.
They gotta pay up. So which way are you going with this? Eagles are favored by 7.5, so over a touchdown is the line here.
Yeah, man. And listen, like before the Micah trade, maybe this would have changed my opinion, but I'm taking the Eagles. I'm taking the Eagles by 7.5. Yeah, they're the best team in the NFL. I don't expect that to change. And the Cowboys got significantly worse in the offseason. So I'm taking the Eagles to cover this 7.5 spread, which is pretty sizable for week 1.
It really is, and I agree. Unfortunately, because the other aspect in this too that is a wild card is, and I think people are just ignoring it, that are hyping up the Cowboys again, which I'm fine with. I love Dak and whatnot, but is Schottenheimer, right? Like we do have a first-year head coach here, and you're getting a taste of it immediately by having to go to Philly. Is going to be bumping tonight. I mean, those fans are going to be crazy. So I'm going to go with the Eagles to cover that as well. Probably win by 10 or a couple touchdowns. So. Yeah, unfortunately. But all right, let's move on now we have Friday Night Football this week in Brazil. So we've got the Chiefs and the Chargers, divisional matchup, another one. But this one is down in South America. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, for one, I wish they'd stop doing the Brazil games, man. That last year's Brazil game was really rough. It wasn't good football, and a lot of guys were risking injury playing on that grass. It was not great. And I expect more of the same, dude. Like these are two teams that have won with defense the last couple of years, man. Especially with Harbaugh coming in for the Chargers, he wants to win by controlling the game with the run game and defense, and that's how the Chiefs have been, still winning despite their offense not being as explosive the last few seasons. So I don't see a reason to expect differently in this game. I think it's going to be a defensive matchup. I am intrigued by the potential of the Chiefs offense though, just because they have a lot of speedsters now. They bring in Josh Simmons, which feels like he might fix that left tackle issue that they've had. So yeah, but I ultimately expect this to be one of those defensive run the game kind of matchups, and it's going to be a sloppy game, man. I just expect people are going to be talking about changing the cleats, and they're in halftime. It's going to be sloppy in Brazil, man, with that grass.
Yeah, catch up on chat a little bit. Daniel Hightower saying it should be a great way to start the NFL season. Watch the Cowboys start 0-1. I'm sure a lot of fans agree.
In the chat,
Cowboys hate, and America's team or the America's team to hate just depends on the perspective a little bit. Yeah, I think we'll obviously touch on this later as we get into the Packers. But if we remember, Jordan Love's injury happened in that Brazil game. Yep. So Jordan Love got dinged up in that game week 1 last year against the Eagles, and it lingered with him all season. So yeah, it's funny because somebody else was talking about, maybe Sam on Check the Mic, about how it's always like let's play on grass more and stuff, and then it's like you get into games like this where the field's just sloppy, man. It's just sloppy, and especially when you have guys like we got guys who are fast out there cutting on a dime, with Worthy and Marquise Brown and even Tyquan Thornton, a receiver. And running backs, man, like, with O'Marion Hampton's first career game as a starter is going to be on that field is a little rough. But yeah, I suspect a lot of the same as well. Both of these matchups last year were low scoring, battle it deep into the fourth quarter matchups. They were gritty. And I think the Chiefs actually won the second matchup off of a late, basically game-winning field goal. And it may have been even one of those games that had the like crazy things swing their way that even led to that happening, where they just got incredibly lucky. So both were really close, but both were those kind of defensive slugfests. And a lot of people are curious if the Chiefs can get that offense back to the explosive nature it was, for 2 or 3 years there. But it just hasn't been over the last few seasons. And personally, I don't see that changing. They have a lot of speed on it, but I also just think it's part of the way that Andy Reid has designed the offense now is to just take what's given and also the way that defenses are now defending, right? With the too high shell thing being a part of that as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a control the game from both perspectives. Obviously, that's what Harbaugh loves to do, but I think the Chiefs will try to match that.
It is interesting because if it wasn't in Brazil and you didn't have the field as an issue, I do think this would be a potential game where the Chiefs could unlock that explosive offense because that
Right.
Chargers secondary is extremely inexperienced. They've played well, okay? They've played well, but there's still question marks in that secondary overall. So it would be a kind of game where, this is a decent matchup to get right if you're that Chiefs offense because, I mean, like we're saying, they haven't had that explosion in a few years. But it also just feels like one of those type of games. It's going to be 17-17, and Mahomes is going to get the ball with like 20 seconds left and find a way to win it, dude. That's just they do that in regular season, man. That has been their MO in the regular season. Like it's a defensive slugfest, and they just find a way in the end. And that's kind of how I have that game playing out.
Yeah, I agree. And a few things, Josh Simmons starting at left tackle as a rookie will be interesting to watch him out there against Khalil Mack. And then, for the Chargers, Marion Hampton will be a key to watch. And then the offense. I'm curious to see how the pass catchers look, right? Ladd McConkey in year 2. And then Trey Harris, how much playing time does he get? Keandre Lambert-Smith looked good in preseason. So be curious to see how the weapons around Herbert looks and see how high-powered that offense can actually be. And then I think it's probably where you're about to go, the injury as well. That's a huge, huge blow for the Chargers with Slater's injury as well.
Yeah, that it's going to be interesting to see how the Chiefs exploit that. Could be putting Chris Jones out on the edge in crucial third down situations to exploit the right tackle. Also curious to see how Joe Alt moves to left tackle. I mean, switching a guy back and forth, and I know he played left tackle in college, but I mean, going back and forth, I don't know how good that is for his development, even though he is one of the best tackles in the NFL. And, I was actually going to bring up the Chargers pass catchers as well. I'm intrigued to see which of those young guys actually step up and take a huge role in the offense. And how much they continue to try to do the Quentin Johnson thing. Like, are we gonna continue to act like he should be like one of the top receivers in the offense, or should we just pull the plug on that and get Trey Harris in there and pair him with? Because I mean, pairing Trey Harris, Keenan Allen, and Ladd McConkey on the field at one time, and I know Keenan's older and he has some question marks as what he has left, but that is an intriguing group of pass catchers, and I think one of the best that Herbert has had, honestly, in his career. So I would like to see them do that and just let's stop keep pushing Quentin Johnson when he has not shown enough to be an NFL wide receiver.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I want to touch on with the Simmons thing too is also, Kingsley Sumayatea starting at guard. So it's the entire left side of that offensive line has been changed since they traded Joe Thuney away in the offseason as well. So I'd be interested to see how Jim Harbaugh and the defense attack that side of the offensive line that's a bit more inexperienced and not quite as, as up to par as the right side with Trey Smith and Juwan Taylor. So, all right, Chiefs by 3.5. Where are you going with this one, pick wise?
Yeah, I took the Chiefs, even though I said they could potentially win by a field goal. I don't know. I don't know why I took the Chiefs, man. I don't feel good about that pick at all, to be completely honest with you. I do think it's going to be a very close game. It's going to come down to the wire. But yeah, I guess I'll take Chiefs 3.5. I am intrigued, even though I do think the field is going to impact the offense overall this year. I do think this Chiefs offense is going to improve, especially when they get Rice back from suspension. So
Yeah, this is one I've gone back and forth on. I'm going to take the Chargers to keep it within a field goal.
okay.
So kind of what you were projecting earlier, I kind of see that happening. Game-winning field goal, like their last matchup went. So I'm gonna take the Chargers to cover the 3.5 there.
I like it.
All right, now let's move on to Sunday's 1:00 slate. So we'll kind of put all these together at once. Easier to do the kind of primetime games with their own thing. So
It's also
starting
easier
off the
for
one
the production team as well.
Yeah, for production, yeah. We'll start the Sunday slate. Starts off with the Bucks and Falcons in a divisional matchup. Michael Penix getting his first start to begin the season, and Baker Mayfield and high-powered offense coming in off another division title. What are you looking for in this one?
I think this is going to be a fun game, man. I think this is going to be fireworks. Let's not forget last year the team Kirk Cousins threw 500 yards against was the Bucks, man. So I think they have answers to that Bucks defense. So this could be a coming out party for old Michael Penix in this first game. From a Falcons perspective, very curious to see how the rookie edge rushers look. That's going to be a big part of their year and their defense to finally find a good. They haven't even have a good pass rusher, let alone an elite one the last few years. It's also a good time for them to or a good game to start because Tristan Wirfs is out. He's not actually playing right now, so you get to exploit the backup tackle for the Bucks. So intrigued to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it is an interesting one because the Falcons swept this last year, including that 500-yard outing. That was I think the overtime game that they won, which was kind of one of the big moments for Kirk before things fell off a little bit. And then they managed to win the game later in October, and was honestly making the season look a little bleak for the Bucks at that time because that's when the Falcons had a decent lead on the division. And then Kirk started to not play very well, and things kind of fell in line for the Bucks to win it. But it was the Falcons winning both those games were huge in terms of the outlook on the division, and it's a week one matchup, but it can have that type of implications later on in terms of who can come out of this division as the winner. So yeah, interested to see Penix. He looked good, and he looked good in the small sample we saw him, and he's got some talent around him. This offense is probably one of the more underrated ones, I would say. You've got Drake London, you've got Darnell Mooney, who's been fantastic over the past couple of years. Kyle Pitts is what he is, but I mean, you could still get a little more out of him. And then you've got Bijan. So curious to see how they handle old Todd Bowles. And obviously, they had him figured out last year. Zach Robinson did. So be curious to see how that goes. And, Caleb McGarry being out is also a big thing. And a lot of the storylines for a lot of these teams, noticing we're only a few games in, is your starting tackle being out.
Yeah.
Starting tackle, man.
Especially since, the scarcity of tackle overall in the NFL, there's not a lot of good backup tackles. So when you're good, I mean, Tristan Wirfs is great. He's all like Hall of Fame trajectory, great. So when your potentially all pro tackle is out, or your, solid tackle is out, like in the Falcons perspective, it can really hurt an offense. From the Bucks perspective, I'm fascinated to see how the pass catchers shape up or play together, because Emeka Egbuka has gotten some of the most hype out of all the rookie wide receivers, and Mike Evans is always good, and some games he can just take over, and if Chris Godwin, of course, the health is always gonna be a question mark, but if he can get on the field at the same time as Emeka Egbuka, all of a sudden that trio of pass catchers is going to be really, really difficult to stop. So, and you got Baker, the volatility of Baker, a lot of big time throws in there, going to be a lot of turnover worthy plays as well. So it's going to be intriguing, man. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be fireworks, dude. I think this is going to be, going back to last year, this matchup's always just a fun offensive game.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate the injuries that have happened in the wide receiver room. Jalen McMillan is on IR, which I was a fan of him. He's, losing some of that depth there and then waiting for Godwin to get fully healthy. Another thing to look for is Jacob Parrish, currently, who we were both a fan of, is projected to start in the nickel for them. So they're going to have a rookie out there. I think Morrison's still coming back from his injury, so I don't think he's going to be ready. So curious to see how that secondary looks with Zion McCullum, who's still been pretty good. So where are you going with this one? Bucks favored by 2.5 in Atlanta, coming off of 2 games where Atlanta won last year. Is interesting.
I took the Falcons, man. I was actually surprised to see the Bucks were favored on the road in this game, to be completely honest with you, especially considering how we just talked about the matchups last year. So, yeah, I'm going to take Atlanta in this game to cover the 2.5.
After me just talking about all that, I took the Bucks. I think Baker starts hot. The offense looks good. Fortunately, we don't know the pass rushing situation for the Falcons yet. We don't know what Jalen Walker and James Pierce are going to be yet. So if there was a game to start with not having Tristan Wirfs, this could be an easy one to ease your way into. So, but yeah, I'll take the Bucks to win by a field goal in Atlanta. All right, let's move on now to the Bengals and the Browns. So a big story here, as always, the Bengals start 0-2 or worse. They've only been even 500 through the first 2 games, I think once in like the last 6 or 7 years. It predates even Joe Burrow. So can the Bengals overcome their early season woes?
Yeah, that is a big storyline, dude. They played their starters in the preseason because of it. They were really forcing their starters out there to the point that people were questioning it, like, why are they playing so deep into these meaningless preseason games? I mean, Joe Burrow was like in the second quarter playing against the Commanders in week 2 of preseason. a lot of weird stuff for the Bengals, but it is because of these slow starts that they've had. So they wanted to make sure, okay, you're gonna gel immediately. Now, this is a good case study for that, but it's a little bit different when you're playing starting defenses and you have to block Myles Garrett. Like that's a big question mark. It's actually one of the matchups in this game, those Bengals tackles versus Myles Garrett, because the Bengals offensive line, I mean, Bengals fans know this. It has not been good since Joe Burrow's been there, and they really haven't. They've tried to address it. I just don't think they've hit, right. They've tried in the draft, and it just hasn't worked out. So Myles Garrett could eat in this game. Also intrigued with Mason Graham to see adding him to that Browns defensive line. So that's a potential way for the game to stay close. And of course, you got the Browns offense, which is gonna be a mess. I don't have a lot of expectations for Joe Flacco and the Browns offense, to be completely honest with you. However, if they are going to go off this season, it is going to be against this Bengals defense, which was historically bad last year.
Yeah, and that is kind of the focus for me is, can the Cleveland offense, keep this close? And to be honest, we've seen this Bengals offense struggle against the Browns multiple times. One of our buddies is a Bengals fan, and it's kind of a running joke that the Browns are kind of in Burrow's kryptonite to a degree, even if they've won the game, just not performing very well. And they will also have a rookie left guard starting. Dylan Fairchild is projected to start. So that's not going to help in terms of being able to stop Myles Garrett and Mason Graham and that front four. But that is kind of the story is, can the Bengals offensive line, it's crazy how much Joe Burrow has been productive behind an offensive line that has been so inept. Yeah. It says a lot about him and his ability to operate under pressure. But yeah, I think I have not seen enough to think that this Bengals defense is going to take a step forward. They obviously switched. They moved on from, actually, isn't he the Colts defense coordinator now?
Yep.
Now, yeah, Lou Anarumo. And they now have Al Golden back there. So I just don't see this Bengals defense taking an immediate step forward when they didn't really change the personnel much. I think Demetrius Knight's projected to start as well, and then Shamar Stewart, obviously their first round pick. But I don't know if this defense is. That's what I'm going to be watching more than anything, to be honest, is what does this defense look like? Because that'll tell us what the Bengals' ceiling is for the season.
Their only hope is the idea that defense is volatile year to year, and that the baseline was so low last year that it's going to be hard to be worse than that, or even at that same level again, because it's not like they have complete bums up and down the roster. Now, they don't have I mean, really their only star is Trey Hendrickson on defense, and then a bunch of unknown commodities, really, or veterans who they're trying to hold on to and get more out of, like Geno Stone. But yeah, I mean, that is intriguing. Like, can this Bengals, and it is, it's going to be something we have to monitor throughout the year, but can this defense be better? Because they let Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and that offense down numerous times last year. And yeah, and plus again, the Myles Garrett factor, like he can completely wreck games. And that's probably one of the big reasons he has had issues against the Browns over his career, because they don't have anyone on their roster that can block him.
Yeah. And the volatility of defense, I do think that's their hope. And getting Trey Hendrickson back, obviously, this defense would have looked bleak. It would have been similar to the Cowboys situation if they didn't have him out there.
So sure.
Yeah, and if you've watched the quarterback documentary, then you know how it's kind of brutal at times to watch Joe Burrow out there and like lose a game he scored 38 points in and threw for 4 touchdowns and no picks. So hopefully they don't let him down. But old Joe Flacco over there, though, he's going to put up a fight. So which way are you going with this? Bengals favored by 5.5 on the road here in the division.
I definitely consider the Bengals slow starts. Like last year, they played the Patriots and lost. That was one of the Patriots' only wins last year. But I am going to take the Bengals, man. I'm going to say variance is in their favor this time. It's like, how many week ones can you really suck in a row? Plus, I'm thinking maybe the preseason helped a little bit, getting them out there and getting them some playing time before the season starts. So I got Bengals covering the 5.5.
Leaning into my consistent prove me wrong or until I see it. So I went Browns cover 5.5 because even if they win by a field goal, I got it there. I would like to believe they don't start slow again, but it's what I know right now.
Got to see it.
I'll suspect it. And the other side of that too is I expect a quick start from Flacco. I think when Flacco has gone into games and been like, oh, yeah, we're handing the reins over to you, he usually plays pretty well right out of the gate. So that's the other factor for me, is that their offense can keep up in this game with the Bengals defense not being super great.
And you never know with Flacco, man. Like Flacco can hit you with 4 or 5 big time throws in a game, man. Like, he's still got the arm for that. So you just never know with Flacco.
You do not. All right, let's move on now to the Dolphins at Colts. An interesting matchup. Daniel Jones, as the new era of Colts football begins, with Daniel Jones at the helm.
Danny Dimes at the helm. And honestly, the Bengals get a lot of flack for starting slow. The Colts are also slow starters, man. I think we might have broke our streak of winning home openers, but there for a while we didn't win a home opener for years. We're an opener.
There's always the Jags too. Yeah, the Jags early and losing.
The Jags on the road. Yeah, that's another one. But yeah, it is going to be. I will say the Colts offense is very, very interesting, dude. I think. And I get Daniel Jones has not been a good quarterback. Even when they were winning, he wasn't an above average quarterback. He was always average at most or at best, and a guy who can make some big plays in the run game and have some dimes here and there, but he's not been consistently above average. This will be his best situation. There's no doubt about that. It will be his best offensive line he's ever had, and the best group of pass catchers he's ever had, even though Malik Neighbors might be his best receiver he's had, but he only played with him for like a half a season. So it's very, very interesting to see how this Colts offense looks in general, how they click. And I think the ceiling is pretty high on it. Now with Daniel Jones as quarterback, its ceiling's also the floor is also pretty low. And then Miami, dude, like from Miami's perspective, it's like, dude, like, are the off-season vibes going to lead into the season? Like, are the vibes indicative of how you're going to play? Because this feels like a team. Listen, they still have Tua, they still have the group of pass catchers and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. So that means their baseline should be pretty high, but it doesn't feel that way. It hasn't felt that way all season. And even though Tua is really good at getting the ball out quick, so protecting his offensive line in that way, I'm very concerned about their offensive line. I mean, Teron Armstead, their best tackle, their best offensive lineman by far, just retired in the offseason. So it's really gone from bad to worse for their offensive line. And so can the Colts, exploit that on the defensive line?
This is another one of those interesting matchups where it's like, if here's your time to kind of get right or not, to figure out what you are, because the Dolphins defense is not great on paper, right? So, getting a home game against this defense as your first start for the Colts for Daniel Jones is one of the best situations you probably could have got. They still have a great pass rush. I'll give them that. Jalen Phillips, and Bradley Chubb. So that's something they'll have to keep an eye on. But the secondary wise, Ashton Davis, starting at safety, is coming back from injury. He's on track to be able to play Sunday. They've got currently 5th round pick Jason Marshall's projected to start in the nickel. The secondary is not great. You've got Storm Duck, Minka's back, Jack Jones, Jason Marshall, and Ashton Davis. If there was ever a game for a quarterback to be able to get into a rhythm, it would be this one. Now, the defensive line could wreak some havoc with Kenneth Grant also getting added to that. But the Colts offensive line should still be good, but is also something to kind of keep an eye on, with that interior kind of getting redone with Fries and Kelly.
Especially the interior, because you got 2 new starters who have looked good when they've played, but it's still a question mark. But yeah, you make a great point with the secondary. The secondary should be able to be exploited. I mean, it's not a good secondary. That's the problem with Miami, man. They have a couple position groups that are like, okay, I feel really good about the receivers. I feel really good about their pass rushers, but I feel bottom of the league secondary and bottom of the league offensive line, which are 2 crucial position groups. And the Colts are going to have to exploit that. So I'm looking at, can Latu take a step forward in year 2? DeForest Buckner is going to do his thing. How does JTT look as a rookie? I mean, this is the matchup for Latu. Hey, this is the time you should go dominate this game. So I'm looking at that. And yeah, man, like, and again, like, how does, with all the Tyreek drama, it feels like there's a new quote every single week. Like, how does that play out for Miami? And can this, because dude, there's been times, especially against rough defenses, which, the Colts secondary is, I think, solid, but it's, there's still some question marks on it. Against bad teams, dude, they've cooked bad teams. I mean, they have looked really, really good on offense in the past. I just don't know. I don't know if that's in them anymore. I really don't. That's a question for Miami this year. So
that has kind of been their MO for the Mike McDaniel era, was dominate not good teams and then just kind of not show up against the actual playoff caliber ones. So yeah, they have 3 rookies projected to start on this team, which is very interesting. Jonas Savaianea, the 2nd round pick, is projected to start at guard right now.
Oh, guard. Okay.
Yeah, with Patrick Paul coming in at left tackle to fill Tehran's. So like, it just doesn't look great on. I mean, and I don't want to talk about injuries a ton until we get into the season and they happen, but it is something to worry about a ton, where you put Tua, with his injury history, who also has a very terrible job of protecting himself, behind an offensive line that looks like this on paper, is a bit worrying. But to your point, so it's a good opportunity for Latu to try to break out in year 2. Doesn't look great for the interior going against DeForest Buckner. He could, this is the type of game DeForest Buckner, who's pretty underrated, could just take control of. He could wreak havoc, just destroy the run game and cause mayhem from within. So yeah, and then the drama is interesting to see. We'll see how the Dolphins look team-wise, and then how this game goes. I suspect every week our conversations on the Dolphins are going to be a bit driven by what's happening not on the field sometimes. So
yeah, definitely. And I honestly, their team building effort, it was flashy at first, but it looks like it's kind of played its course, right? Like, speed is very important in the league, but you can't just win with speed. And that's how they built the team. They built the team from the outside in, and really emphasized speed. And they kind of neglected the trenches for years. And now they're trying to go away from that, right? Like, they emphasize the trenches in this past draft, but it might be too little, too late for this regime.
Too little, too late. The line on this one actually surprised me. Colts by 1.5, which means that Dolphins would be favored. Yeah, it means essentially they would be favored on a neutral field, which Vegas apparently is not as low on the Dolphins in terms of how their roster looks compared to the rest of the league right now. So.
And I think part of that is the historic data that we have, that against the non-elite teams, Miami's offense has been really good. But I mean, I'm not saying, I definitely don't think the Colts, as a Colts fan, I definitely don't think the Colts are an elite team. But I think the defensive line should be able to get after Tua in a big way. So I've got the Colts covering that spread. And Yeah, and I think it will be close. I mean, all these games are likely to be closest in the NFL, but yeah, a lot to look out for. I mean, with these teams, a lot, especially the Colts wise on offense. Very intrigued with how the
Oh
offense will
yeah.
look.
Yeah, especially Tyler Warren's debut.
Hmm.
Linebacker isn't necessarily a strength with Willie Gay, who's kind of moved around a little bit now, and now Jordan Brooks, former first round pick. I also took the Colts 1.5. I just think some of these matchups for week one where it's close like this, I'm just taking the better roster. And that's
And
how
the
I feel
home
about the
team.
Colts. And the home team, that helps, man. It does.
It
So
does.
I'm going to take the Colts by, to cover that spread and win that one. So, all right. Let's move on now to Raiders at Patriots. Talk about new regimes,
Yes.
new quarterbacks. This is
So
an
much new.
interesting week one matchup. Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those games that like we're not going to be able to overreact to it just because there is so much new stuff on both sides. And like whoever comes out on top, like if one team dominates this game, we're gonna be, oh wow, they fixed the roster. But it could just be that the other team, everything that they did in the offseason was just not good. Um, but it is an intriguing game, man. It's a very intriguing game. I mean, like you said, two new regimes, two head coaches that feels like they elevate their teams, no matter the talent. And so I'm intrigued to see how that looks. And then in particular, Patriots offense. Man, it feels like they raised their ceiling big time in the offseason. And I know Stephon Diggs has his question marks as the number one receiver, but I still think he has good play left in him. And then you have year two of Drake May with what looks to be a much better offensive line. We have to see that, right? We have to see that on the field. But it just everything looks much better on this offense. And then Travion Henderson watch. I was, incredibly impressed with him in the preseason.
Yep.
And against the Raiders defense that, I mean, it's doesn't stand out, right? It's not a standout unit overall. See what Max Crosby can do though against the rookie Will Campbell. If they match up at any point, that's a matchup to watch. Especially with Max Crosby's huge arms against Will Campbell's T-Rex arms.
That arm length. Oh.
Exactly. So that's going to be intriguing. And then Raiders offensively and another group. I don't think their ceiling. I'm not as intrigued with their ceiling as the Patriots. I think they've got some question marks, especially as far as weapons are concerned. I don't know if I believe in their weapons yet, but it is going to be fun to see Genty, Genty in full game action, man. It's going to be fun to see that.
Yeah. This is one of those prime candidates for me as an overreaction to week one game because it feels like regardless of who wins there's going to be part of our show, to be honest, with the previews, we should start trying to predict the takes. We need a segment.
Yeah, that's fun. Yes, I love that
because I'll tell you right now, if the Patriots win this, every ESPN, everything's just going to be talking about how Drake May is the GOAT. He's great. Next Brady, Mike Vrabel is one of the best coaches ever, and then the opposite would be true. If the Raiders win, they're going to be like, well, Pete Carroll, his team's just good. Yep. Like it's going to be an overreaction.
Threat to the Chiefs.
Exactly. Oh yeah. People will immediately start saying they're winning the division. It would leap to the dumbest of things imaginable. And people would be saying the Raiders are going to win the division. That being said, I do love this matchup though, because it is very interesting with Pete Carroll and Mike Vrabel back at it, back coaching. And they do, from their history, shows that they do have a baseline of being able to elevate a roster above. I mean, every single Seahawks team that Pete Carroll fielded was a good football team. And they looked good. And Vrabel, up until the wheels fell off, was able to elevate the Titans roster until John Robinson had destroyed it into oblivion.
Yeah. I mean, genuinely, though, at the end of Vrabel's he had a play-in game where Josh Dobbs could have led the Titans to the playoffs. That just kind of speaks to, and that roster was awful. At that point, the roster had been completely stripped down, and it was basically Derrick Henry and friends and Big Jeff on the other side. So yeah, Vrabel absolutely has shown he's elevated teams, and dude, Pete Carroll has been successful everywhere he's ever coached. And that's like the kind of factor. And I get it's year one, game one, but he's got his guy in Geno. It's hard to bet against Pete Carroll. And I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but I think they're going to be competitive, dude. I think they're going to be very competitive. I do agree with your take about the potential hot takes out of this game, because I mean, because that was kind of what I was getting at too. Because it feels like, especially if one of the teams get blown out, like I think they're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
give too much credit to the team that did the blowing out.
Yes.
Too much credit. And let's not forget the Patriots won week 1 last year against the Bengals, and so you know, let's not overreact to any week
Yeah.
1 game, please.
Right, and proceeded to have a top 5 draft pick. So,
Correct.
but
Correct.
yeah, matchup wise, it's going to be interesting. You know, Geno Smith in a new offense with an offensive line that is pretty solid. I would say it's better than the Seahawks offensive line that he was behind. Not elite by any means, but probably better. And then, you know, the pass catchers he now has is probably the biggest step down for him. You know, going from
Yes.
DK and JSN to now, you know, Jacoby Myers being your number 1 and Dante Thornton as a rookie, VFL.
Amari Cooper just retired today, so
he decided to retire today.
he's
He's like,
done.
I'm not feeling it. Yeah, so now it's Dante Thornton and then Jack Besh. The other rookie's looking like he'll get playing time early. So that's going to be the interesting thing to watch for the Raiders is those very young skill players around Geno Smith. And then and the weakest part of the Raiders is probably the defense. Outside of Max Crosby, it's not great. It's just not. And again, talking about these opportunities, if there's an opportunity for Drake May and this Patriots offense to get in sync, it's against the defense like this, right?
Yeah.
Kyle Williams make an impact as a rookie. Stephon Diggs could take this game over, to be honest. And then, but one thing to note too is with Will Campbell starting at left tackle, Jared Wilson was also announced as the starting left guard. So they have 2 rookies starting on the left side of that offensive line. If I'm the Raiders, that's where Max Crosby's living this game.
Yes.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, and it's 2 guys that we both like as prospects, and I feel like they'll be better than what they had before, but it's still 2 rookies, man. Offensive line is just not the position group where you can just say rely on a rookie to go out and be good immediately. It happens sometimes. We saw it with Joe Alt. He was immediately good, but it doesn't always happen. And it doesn't mean Will Campbell's a bust if he's bad this year either. It just takes some time. So yeah, that's definitely an intriguing matchup to watch, but I agree with you. That's why I'm specifically looking at the Patriots offense in this game. It feels like this could be Drake May's coming out party, man. It could be Drake May's coming out party. And that's why you're hitting at the potential hot takes from it. But yeah, it's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I'm looking at this one slot. I'm like, what 4 games are going to make it into my quad box? And then I'll have red zone on the other. So I'm like, this is one that probably going to have to make it on there.
Yeah.
Because the stories and the coaching. And one thing that I'll also be looking at too on defense is the Patriots defense, because, you know, Gerard Mayo had the defensive, you know, obviously playing linebacker for the Patriots. That's his expertise, but the defense was okay. It looked good week 1 against the Bengals, right? But that was one thing Vrabel, I feel like, always had a tendency to do too with the Titans too, is that defense looking better.
Mm-hmm.
They added pieces to it. Harold Landry, which getting the familiarity there, not an elite pass rusher, but adding Milton Williams will be another fascinating thing to watch. Is can he replicate what he did last year to earn that big contract coming over from Philadelphia? So I'll be curious to see how this defense looks with Vrabel now over that. And then it's also worth noting that their unofficial depth chart put Travion Henderson as 3rd string, which is hilarious because
he will not be.
Yeah, he will not be. And people pointed out, I think it was Alvin Kamara and maybe it was Kareem Hunt, his rookie year, were all listed as 3rd or 4th string, and then we saw how that went. So don't buy into it.
Travion will be playing a lot in this game, and eventually he'll be the first running back on the field.
Yes. I mean, I don't know how you could convince me that Ramondre should be starting over him. So
it's one of and Vrabel's one of those coaches of Dakota that's like old school mindset. It's like, rookies got to earn this starting roster spot, you know. So yeah, I think he'll get the majority of the touches
after his first 13-yard run.
Yeah,
he'll have the job.
Exactly.
All right, Patriots favored by 3.5 here at home. Where are you going here?
I'm taking the Patriots to win, but the Raiders to cover. Okay. 3.5 felt like a lot, even though the Patriots are at home. It's Pete Carroll in the debut. I think it's going to be a close one, so I'm going to take the Raiders to cover the 3.5.
I agree. I took the same. I think Patriots win, but I think they keep it within a field goal, maybe even a game-winning field goal type scenario here. I think with these 2 coaches at the helm, it's hard for me to not see this being a close game. All right, let's move on to Arizona Cardinals at the New Orleans Saints. Spencer Rattler era has officially begun after getting a taste of it last year when Derek Carr got hurt. It is now Spencer Rattler's team. What are you looking for in this one?
This one's not making the quad box, is it? This one's not making the
It's
quad
not,
box.
man. I'm sorry. I want to watch
It's
some
not
of the
making
car.
the
I want
quad
to see Will
box.
Johnson and stuff, but it's not making it.
Hey, there's a lot of specifically from the Cardinals, because the Cardinals, I think, have playoff potential in them. I think they have. I think they could win this division. So I am intrigued. Have to start with the Cardinals offense. Can Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray get on the same page? And overall, can they improve as a unit and be more consistent as a unit overall? And then defensively, man, and I know Walter Nolan's out right now, but adding Will Johnson to a defense that's already playing feisty, if they can add stars to this Cardinals defense, it's an intriguing unit overall. So I think the Cardinals, I'm mostly watching for them, and the Saints, it's and it's tough, right? It's gonna be the discussion on the Saints every week. It's I don't know. Maybe you're looking for your young tackles to look good. That's definitely something they're going to be looking at. But I mean, I don't know how much we'll actually see of Spencer Rattler in the season. If Shuck will be in by week 4 or whatever. We'll have to see how it plays out. But I don't know, man. There's just not a lot to look forward to for the Saints and this team, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, unfortunately, and one of the interesting matchups for this is the Saints offensive line. Talise Fuaga in his second year, Kelvin Banks starting, who looked good in the preseason. He didn't play a ton, but he did look good in pass protection specifically. Going against that kind of rebuilt Cardinals front four, bringing Calais Campbell back in, getting Josh Sweat. So if Walter Nolan was out there, it would have been a lot more fun to watch as well. But that'll be an interesting matchup here, because the Cardinals defense played so far above the talent that was on it last year. That says a lot about Gannon as a coach.
It does.
But the other thing to keep an eye on is, can Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of break out, right?
Yep.
Can he live up to that generational tag that gets thrown around all the time now? Can he live up to that as the 4th overall pick? Him and Kyler really get on the same page. With a skill set, a group of pass catchers that's not great on paper outside of him, to be honest. Zay Jones and Michael Wilson are projected to be the other 2 starters, with not a lot of depth there outside of Greg Dortch. So
they need them.
Kind of need Marvin Harrison.
They do. Listen, especially in that class of, wow, look how many guys hit and hit the ground running immediately. Really, I mean, I can't think of one guy that didn't outside of Rome Odunze. So it's you really need Marvin Harrison to be that guy. And yeah, so especially since that debate was also between Joe Alt as well, which they could have obviously used. So yeah, they need Marvin Harrison to break out. And this feels like a good game to do it.
Yeah, and again, this is another one where the matchup stuff is also kind of nice, where Chris Olave, receiving core for the Saints is solid, but Chris Olave's health is the main question. So we'll get to see what Will Johnson is pretty early on, if he's out there playing sooner rather than later. So definitely going to keep my eye on him. James joining us in chat saying he might have missed it already, but we boys, we definitely picked the Cowboys to cover. Don't go back and watch it. Just believe us.
Just believe us, man.
It's going to buckle up, man. Buckle up. Tonight will be fun. It'll be fun.
For Eagles fans.
Yeah, sorry, James. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I mean, and this is also, would like to remind people, the Saints started off 2-0 last year, looking like they were going to win this division, and then fell off a cliff. So
yes,
it's another summation of just not overreacting to week 1, but we'll see what happens. Would it completely shock me if the Saints found a way to win this game? No. But it would be disappointing for the Cardinals if that happened, because they've got to get on. They do not have the luxury of dropping games like this in their division. That's going to come down to the wire. In an NFC that has now become a bit more loaded in terms of this fighting for a playoff spot if you don't win this division. So,
I'm also looking at Kellen Moore in his debut. How does he manage the game? How does he look as a head coach? Does he look overwhelmed? That's kind of a talking point with all these first-year head coaches, because even if you don't have the roster, sometimes you can just tell that the team is headed in the right direction. Best example of that I can come up with right now is Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell won 4 games his rookie head coaching season, but you could just tell the Lions were headed. They had the guy. They had the right guy. They just needed the Jimmies and the Joes, as they say. And I think that, potentially could be where the Saints are, depending on what Kellen Moore looks like and how he manages this game.
And then future state, we've talked about it a lot. It is worth noting that Doug Nussmeier is their offensive coordinator. Arch, one game in, did not look great. Garrett looked pretty decent though.
It did.
So we'll see. Will they go try to draft the coach's son if the regime is still here next year? Depending on how the season goes. But I hate to tell Saints fans to just check out, but pay attention to those. Pay attention to those college quarterbacks, man. Pay attention to them. All right, Cardinals by a touchdown here on the road. Where are you going?
I took the Cardinals, man. I took the Cardinals. It's hard not to, based on all of our Saints analysis in this preseason. And I think the Cardinals have high end potential. That's why I'm really, really interested to see how they look in this Week 1 matchup.
Yeah, Gannon has been a pick for Coach of the Year by a few people, and his odds are relatively high as well. Because I do think if they make the playoffs, they usually give it to teams that exceed or kind of live up to that. So I also took them to cover the touchdown here in New Orleans. All right, let's move on now to the revenge game. Aaron Rodgers immediately goes back to New York to take on his former team. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. Just one, how does Rodgers look? Like one more off season, one more year of getting older. So how does he look? How does he move? Like, does he move any better? Because he hasn't moved great the last few years. It's not like the old Aaron Rodgers where he can escape the pocket and extend the play. So that's going to be intriguing. And then the Steelers offense as a whole, like, it's DK Metcalf and that's it. Like, does Roman Wilson break out? Like, is DK going to have a partner in crime, or is it just going to be the DK show the whole time? And how does Aaron Rodgers handle that as well? Like, is he able to elevate one of these younger wide receivers? And then the Steelers defense, which I think is going to be a storyline the whole year based on my expectations. My expectations is this is one of the best units in the NFL. So I expect them to play like that, especially against the Jets, which is also Justin Fields' revenge game, by the way. Justin Fields, the guy who started 4-2.
Double revenge. Yeah.
Exactly. The guy who started 4-2 with the Steelers last year and then got benched for Russ, which, I think some people still question that decision. So yeah, see how Justin Fields looks against this really good Steelers defense. First of all, got to look at the tackles, the two young tackles for the Jets, Fashanu in his second year and Mimbu in his first year. How do they look against the Steelers' elite pass rush, one of the best pass rushes in the NFL? So that's definitely a matchup to watch.
Yeah, I forgot it is the double revenge game. To be honest, it is more of a revenge one for Justin Fields because, to your point, he did start off 4-2 last year before getting sent to the curb when Russ got healthy. So, yeah, this is an interesting matchup because, the quarterback play is going to define how this goes, and the offensive line for the Jets is probably the thing to keep an eye on the most. One thing that will help them is Derek Harmon has been ruled out already. So the rookie defensive tackle for the Steelers is not going to be out there to help with that pass rush. It's not going to matter a ton. I mean, they still have Hayward. They still have Highsmith. They still have TJ Watt. Obviously, it would have been helpful to have another piece there on the interior. But yeah, this Jets offensive line, and also worth noting that Elijah Vera Tucker has also been ruled out.
Yep.
So yeah, so that plays a massive role in this with, adding the rookie Armand Mimbu. Justin Fields has benefited. I mean, the Steelers offensive line last year wasn't great. So he was able to manage behind that, but this offensive line could be a little rough, especially without now your veteran at right guard being replaced to now go alongside a rookie, which has been a common theme for a lot of these games. Rookies at tackle and either a rookie at guard or a backup at guard or a backup at tackle next to a rookie. So, but it'd be fascinating to see how that goes. And then can these pass catchers get something going a bit more? Because Garrett Wilson has been good, but I feel like he's still left a bit to be desired at times for the draft pick that he was. So we'll see if Justin Fields and him can get on the same page. And then how that looks against this Steelers defense. That is a tough week 1 matchup.
Yeah, very tough week 1 matchup. Yeah, also looking at Fields in the run game, obviously he's a threat there. See how much they lean into that. They have to. I think if they want to be competitive this year, that's going to be a big part of their offense. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And see if Aaron Rodgers is motivated too. That's another thing. One of those X factors. Motivated Rodgers, and is he letting Tomlin coach him? So.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm going to pay attention to is how the Steelers look from a team perspective as a unit. because with Rodgers on there and the way Mike Tomlin has been able to handle some interesting personalities over the years his time in Pittsburgh. But
I mean,
this
Rodgers
offensive
is a
line
cakewalk compared to what he's had to manage. So
the CTE management job that he's had to do. But yeah, it'd be interesting too with the Jets defensive front against the Steelers offensive line that is essentially built on draft picks from last year. Their center to right tackle are all guys that were drafted last year, from Frazier over to Fatanu. So also the debut of Aaron Glenn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to see what Aaron Glenn is made of defensively, what he was able to do. To be honest, I don't think it's crazy to say this isn't as good of a Jets defense that they've had in the past, but it may still not be crazy to say it's better than what he had in Detroit. Outside of Aiden Hutchinson, the defense wasn't great. Brian Branch, especially when all the injuries started to happen at the end of last year. So be curious to see what he does with the defense. And then James saying Tomlin might be the difference in the game outcome for the season. That is very true. The Steelers will be hoping that he can do what, Robert Saleh and interim wasn't able to do in New York. But yeah, I'd be curious to see that the trenches matchup from the Steelers offensive line there as well.
Agreed.
All right. Steelers favored by over a field goal, 3.5 here on the road in New York. Where are you going?
I'll take the Steelers. Leaning into that defense, I think they could cause a lot of issues for Justin Fields with, the lack of weapons and the potentially poor offensive line, which I think, by the way, I think their tackles have a ton of upside and they could end up being some of the best tackles in the league, but it's still, in their debut, having to go, or in Mimbu's debut, having TJ Watt and Highsmith, it's a tough assignment.
Yeah, not ideal. I agreed. I took the Steelers to cover the 3.5 for that same reason. I think the Steelers defense could just dominate this game, unfortunately, for the Jets and Justin Fields. So, all right, let's move on now to another divisional matchup. The Giants visiting the Commanders, coming off of their NFC Championship game appearance and the second example of a number 2 overall pick leading a roster that everyone preseason said was not very good into the playoffs. So, what are you looking for in Jaden year 2 against Russ and the Giants?
We have to be on slump watch. It's Jaden Daniels' sophomore slump watch, man. And listen, I picked him to win the MVP, so I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. I think they made some of the best moves in the offseason that they could have. I love the Laramie Tunsil move. I think that was just a overall good process. Use draft capital to go get a proven commodity at left tackle. And I don't know how much Debo has left. I don't know if I have high hopes for Debo, but it can't hurt pairing him with Terry McLaurin, giving Terry McLaurin a guy that can open up him a little bit in Debo Samuel. So I think the offense for the Commanders is going to be just fine. I still have question marks about that defense and the lack of pass rush. Now they're facing the Giants offensive line, so might not be too tough to get pressure in week 1 here. But from the Giants' perspective, how does this offense look with Russ and Brian Daboll and Malik Neighbors? It's intriguing. I think it could be better than we think. And then that defensive line for the Giants, man. I think so highly of that defensive line for the Giants. And can that just be a reason they win football games this year? Especially, even though I just said I like the Tunsil move. Listen, it's another group that doesn't have a ton of continuity with the Commanders. So can that defensive line for the Giants kind of take over in this ball game? Potentially, man. That's the potential of this defense line. They might whip everyone this season. That's how good it could be.
Absolutely. And one thing to note for the Commanders offense is Noah Brown dealing with a knee injury. So you have, Terry McLaurin and Debo. You may get to see the rookie, Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech, pretty early on out there with Jaden and company. Josh Connerly starting at right tackle as well. Added to this offensive line alongside Laramie Tunsil. Will be fascinating to see how they look against that defensive front, because that is going to be one of my favorite things to watch this whole season. Is that Giants front 4 and really front 6 with the rotational pieces they now have, where Abdul Carter, whether it's on paper or not, will probably start over Kayvon Thibodeau, or at least in pass rushing situations be the main guy. And pairing that with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, who Dexter's probably one of the most underrated players in the NFL right now. Could be one of
Probably.
those guys that could start winning Defensive Player of the Year if you just kind of watched him a bit more. He just doesn't always have the production like Aaron Donald did to kind of catch everybody's eye. But yeah, this is a fascinating one for me because I also love what the Commanders did in the offseason. And I don't expect a ton of regression because part of it for them as well, which is different than the Texans, is Dan Quinn. And the track record that he has is going to a Super Bowl and what he did in Atlanta. So I think he's also created a culture here that these guys have bought into immediately. That being said, this Giants defense could be a rough start to the season for them to see if they get this offense clicking early.
That's true, especially from the offensive line perspective. Also, just saying Jaden just changes the math on a lot of it. Like in those 4th and 2 situations, it's literally Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and probably Jaden Daniels who I want in those situations the most, using their legs. And that's why I just think, as far as year 2 slumps are concerned, I think Jaden's more protected from it than Stroud, because Stroud, even though he does have some playmaking abilities, he doesn't have it to the level of Jaden Daniels. So even if this offensive line doesn't click right away, Jaden can kind of hide some of it just from his escapability. So I think that's what I kind of expect from them. And again, I don't see the offense taking a step back, but can this defense, with still kind of lacking the talent, be good enough to keep them in games?
And that is probably the thing with the Commanders watching the most is the defense, because you've got a combination of some age in like Lattimore and Bobby Wagner, combined with kind of relying on some younger guys. So I'll be curious, and signing Javon Kinlaw to the deal they did when they got him. I don't know how great I feel about the defense, and I could see them letting them down again, which is unfortunate because offense looked great last year, but some of the games, like the Eagles game where it got out of hand, was the defense just couldn't stop anybody. So be curious to see how that looks. And then Giants-wise, I'm fascinated by the Giants this year.
Same,
because if Russell just looks the same as he did in Pittsburgh, I wonder what the baseline for this team is, man.
Yeah.
Because like between him connecting with Malik Neighbors as well, it's going to be interesting. The offensive line is still not great, but with the defense could be a thing that keeps them in the game, where as long as Russ can play kind of at the level we've seen him do, it may be enough for them to win some games that on paper they shouldn't.
And I'm also intrigued with how quickly will they go to Dart, especially considering how good he looked in preseason, man. He looked so good. I mean, I think people expected him to be 3rd string, but it came out that he was 2nd on the depth chart, and I think a lot of that had to do with his preseason performance. It's definitely not going to be in week 1. It might not even be in week 4, but it really depends on the results, and they have such a tough schedule, such a tough start to the schedule, that I think the team could be better than their record shows through 4 or 5 games. But since their record is so poor, and since their Brian Daboll seat is so hot, they may go to Dart pretty early.
And that's a very good point, because again, they don't have the luxury to sit around and find out if things aren't working. Then Dart will be out there sooner rather than later, which he did look pretty good, but it also could be detrimental to his development and his ability to kind of take this team over if you're thrust into a situation where it's, hey, go save this, and basically saying, hey, save my job for both Joe Schoen and Daboll. So Commanders favored by 5.5 here at home. Where are you going here?
I took the Giants with the points. I think the Commanders will win. I'm so high on the Giants defensive line that I think it'll cover up any issues that they have in the secondary, and it will keep them in ball games. That's how good of a unit it is.
I took the Commanders to cover in a low-scoring affair. I think they can win by a touchdown in like a 24-17 type ball game here. But I like Jaden to cover. I think the offense starts a little slow, but they have enough horsepower to cover that. So, all right, moving on to the last of the 1 p.m. slate, all 8 games. Panthers at Jags, another interesting one. A lot of, man, they didn't know, like, they knew what they were doing with some of the scheduling because it happens after the free agency. But man, this is another really interesting one on paper of Liam Cohen era beginning in Jacksonville, and what is Bryce Young following how he ended last year so well.
And it's really both the quarterbacks, the battle of the two number one picks that haven't lived up to expectations. They're kind of in two different spots where Trevor has never played as poor as Bryce did to start his career, but he hasn't lived up to the generational tag that he got coming out of Clemson. And then, yeah, more Bryce data points because
Bryce
the what Bryce came back from is absolutely, I mean, people don't realize it because they just look at the box score, but what he came out of, which was literally the worst start to a probably the worst start to a number one pick's career ever. Maybe it's up there with Jamarcus Russell, but I mean, Bryce was absolutely horrid, dude. I mean, it didn't even look like he belonged on an NFL field, but then he completely came out of it and he looked like borderline elite at the end of last season, which I mean, if you would have told me that after his rookie year, I just couldn't have believed you because his baseline in the NFL was just so poor. I'm intrigued with more Bryce data points. How does he look in year 3? Now you add T-Mac, which, you know, theoretically would be an elite offensive weapon for them, a number one wide receiver. I didn't necessarily agree with them trading away Adam Thielen. I thought Adam Thielen was just a super reliable target for Bryce, and now Jalen Coker goes down. I think that was kind of the idea when they traded away Thielen, right, Dakota? It was like, okay, we have Jalen Coker to replace that. Jalen Coker immediately goes down with injury, which is kind of an issue because Leggett has not been good. Leggett looks like a bust at the moment. Now that can change. I just got done talking about Bryce, but he looks like a bust at the moment. And then the Jags, I mean, how can you not be extremely interested in the Jags this season? You have Trevor Lawrence and his potential. You have Brian Thomas with how he looked last year. And then Travis Hunter, man. What does Travis Hunter do? Like, how much, obviously he's starting on offense, which pairing him with Brian Thomas looks really good on paper. And then does he play defense? Like, does he actually get in on the defensive side of the ball? He's listed as a backup corner, but backup corners play all the time, Dakota. I mean, you're really rotating through. Obviously, 3 guys can be on the field at one given time, but even if he's the fourth guy will play a lot in a game. Or at least, you know, again, theoretically he would, even though, you know, Travis is playing offense, so we'll see how he manages it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the stories of the season, man. We got to monitor that all season long.
Absolutely. Catch up on chat a little bit. James saying Commanders run away with it, and the Giants game could definitely still see that happening, especially if Russ doesn't play well. And then Jags offense has the ability to boom, and it does. This is an interesting matchup because I was just confirming that this is one of only 2 matchups this week to start the season that are cross conference. So everything else has been just within the same conference. This is one of the ones that is, you know, outside of that, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, Jags offense is something to watch. Liam Cohen with Baker. To be fair, it's funny, you know, Baker used to have that coach killer kind of tag to him, but now he's like the coach giver. Yeah, because his last creator. 2 OCs. Yeah, these are actually, funnily enough, this is the battle of Baker Mayfield OCs. You know, you got Dave Canales in year 2, and then Liam Cohen, the 2 guys that he managed to get hired because he's looked so good over the past couple of years. So, but with that in mind, Liam Cohen was able to continue that success off of what Dave Canales had done, and make Baker lead the league in some passing stats for a while and finish top 3 in both. So fascinated to see what he does with Trevor Lawrence, because you're right, he has not lived up to that hype yet. You know, he's had moments of looking really good, and he's had moments of not. And getting him to just play consistently would be really a massive step in the right direction. And adding, you know, Travis Hunter to Brian Thomas Jr. is fascinating. Love Brian Thomas Jr. He is about to be the next shocking, great LSU wide receiver in the NFL, as if we don't have enough of them. But yeah, that's going to be fascinating to watch. And then, yeah, the Bryce Young stuff, man. It's just the way he ended last year. And I know a lot of people don't care about, I don't care about a grade or whatever. They just want to look at a box score and say, did he throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? And he didn't, but the way he played, especially considering how bad he was before, was kind of unprecedented to just suddenly flip a switch in the middle of the same season, and perform the way that he did. So can he continue that? And also completely agree with the Adam Thielen thing. It does look way worse in hindsight because, with the Coker thing, was he banged up before that happened? But because I know they were really high on him, and he looked good in the preseason. They already had a connection catching a touchdown. So it also means we may see Jimmy Horn Jr., the other Colorado guy, out there a little bit sooner rather than later. So, yeah, fascinating to see what Bryce does in year 3, and then it's also worth noting the Icky injury at left tackle, which won't be helpful to Bryce for the season with Ekwonu out right now.
It will not. It will not, especially when things break down. That was part of Bryce's issue early in his career. When things broke down, it was panic time for Bryce. So yeah, interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, and then defensively, I'm probably looking at the pass rushers for the Panthers, the young guys they drafted in Princely. And then I think Nick Scarton's still dealing with an injury. Or no, he may be back now. So we'll see how they look when they're out there for them. And then the Jags defense too, that, again, how much will Travis Hunter play, but also how they look outside of that, because they have not been a great unit. And then we also get Trayvon Walker coming into to year 4 here, which is kind of just crazy to say. Time's flying, man.
It is.
Chat here. Who do you think would perform better, T-Law on current Jags roster or Bryce on current Jags? That's actually a fascinating question.
Intriguing question. Oh man. I'm still. I think T-Law's baseline has been so much. I still can't get over the fact that Bryce played like the worst starting quarterback by far. Like that happened for a season and a half. We have more bad Bryce, and not just bad, awful Bryce, than we have good Bryce. And T-Law has not ever been that bad. It's not even been close to that bad. He's been kind of average, and then sometimes you get that above average talent, but then most of the time it's not been that. So I would say I'm still gonna say T-Law, but that could change, man. That could change this year.
Yeah, I would also. It's tough with Icky out now. I don't know how I feel about the Panthers' offensive line, but the Jags' offensive line, I'd say, is a slight step below the Panthers. So that would be a minimal step back, which with his out of structure ability to kind of get himself in trouble would be interesting. But pass catchers wise, running back wise, with Etienne back there and Tank, it would be fascinating to see Bryce in this offense. It would definitely be interesting. All right, Jags by 3.5 here at home. Where are you going?
I took the Panthers with the points, man. Took the Panthers with the points. I think the Jags will probably win the game, but I'll say Panthers cover.
I agreed. Took the points there. I like them the Jags could win it, but I like the 3.5. I'm getting there with Carolina to keep it within a field goal for sure. All right, 1 p.m. window done.
Let's go.
Done. You're ready. Everyone's prepped for it now. Let's move on to the 4 o'clock window, which is a weird one for me because the Titans literally never play at 4 o'clock. I think all Titans fans, we literally get like 1 4 o'clock game a year. And we're starting with it. So start things off with the Titans going to Denver. Broncos off of, exceeding expectations with Bo Nix right out of the gate and Sean Payton, and young Cam Ward in his first career start. And it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely going to be a tough one, especially playing at Mile High. I think I'm looking at the quarterbacks the most, dude. Cam Ward, how's he looking his debut? I know as a Titans fan, known a little Titans lore about your fan base, Dakota, that I think a lot of your fan base is hoping for a bad Cam Ward debut because a lot of the recent draft picks for the Titans have had great debuts and they ended up not being the guy. So Mariota played good in his debut. Will Levis played good in his debut, but ended up not being the guy. So, yeah, exactly. Yep. So they're kind of hoping for Cam to look bad in this game, which very possible he'll look really bad in this game. So just based on this Denver defense, which I think is really good. And then year 2 of Bo Nix, I think Dakota, and from the show as well that I'm not fully bought in yet. I'm not fully bought in yet to Bo Nix. I think he looked good as a rookie. But I need to see it again. And that might upset Broncos fans, but I'm just asking for one more year. If he repeats what he did last year, this year, then I'm on the Bo Nix hype train, dude. I'm all over it. And I'll believe in Denver, but I need to see it one more season.
It's got to see it. James saying nightmare matchup for Cam versus Denver. Excuse me. I do completely agree. I think, unfortunately, because I don't want his confidence to be broken, but unfortunately, I do think Vance Joseph is going to have Cam in a blender very early on. We're going to find out if this rebuild offensive line is good or not. That's for sure, because the Broncos last year going into the season, you looked at their front four, you didn't necessarily scream, oh, this is going to be an elite pass rushing unit, but they led the league. That's partly due to Vance Joseph's ability to do sim pressures and Nick Bonito breaking out, who just got paid, making about $30 million a year now. So trenches are going to be fascinating here, because if Cam can't stay upright, then it's not going to matter what he can do. And that was the problem last year for Will Levis. The offensive line was so bad. Combine that with terrible play at times and horrible mistakes, you get absolute disasters. And so Cam Ward could do the same thing. That's the thing, is that it's, there's a new quarterback in town, but he's got that volatility to him where he tries to make plays out of structure. He is more likely to stay in structure to try to make a play, though, than Will Levis. But I am curious to see how this defense, this is a rough welcome to the NFL. Going to Mile High and playing this defense that added Hufanga, that added Jahdae Barron, has the reigning defensive player of the year, who's going to most likely lock down Calvin Ridley. So you're going to be working with Alec Amanor, your rookie, and Van Jefferson in the slot and stuff. So going to be a tough matchup offensively for Cam Ward against this defense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the line looked a whole lot better in the preseason, but that's against vanilla coverages and
and backups.
Yeah, exactly. And backups. Exactly. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. Now, I do expect this offensive line to be better. And I think it's going to be much improved over what it's been the last few years, but is it enough? Probably not in this week 1 game.
And then defensively for the Titans, a unit that outperformed last year. They were an interesting one where they were terrible in points against and whatnot, but great in yards because of how many turnovers happened. But they did play relatively well. I will say probably one of the worst pass rushing units in the entire NFL, if not the worst. So Bo Nix, if there's a game for Bo Nix to kind of keep it going, this is a game to start it with, because the secondary is also not great. Defense in general, like on paper, doesn't look great.
I may need to apologize after week 1 if Bo Nix lights it up. So
when he throws for 300 on this inept defense, it's apologist time, because the linebacking core, it could be a rough game for the Titans. If the offense gets shut down, the defense, it's going to be tough for them to stop the offense, to be completely honest, mainly just because of the way Sean Payton can scheme things up. So probably going to be a rough one for the Titans and Cam Ward's welcome to the debut and potential opportunity for the Broncos to start the season off hot, which a lot of people are predicting them to win the division now. So
They are.
All right, 7.5 for the Broncos. It got moved up to over a touchdown. Where are you going?
I took the Broncos to cover. I think this could get out of hand, but again, it breaks the bad juju of opening quarterback or drafted quarterbacks having good debuts for the Titans. So I'm hoping for that for you and the Titans fans, that it breaks that bad juju the last couple of quarterbacks I've had, and they get blown out in this one.
Rooting for the blowout. Now, I take the Broncos as well. I think I could see this being like a 31-13, 27-13 type game. I like the Broncos to cover in Mile High. All right, moving on to another divisional matchup.
Fun one,
A fun one, man. 49ers visiting the rebuilt Seattle Seahawks offense. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, man, I'm looking to see, like, if the Niners can get back to that incredible offense that Kyle Shanahan has really had since he's been the coach there. I mean, outside of a few years, and they have the playmakers to do it. Now they're still dealing with the injuries. Ayuk hasn't back yet. I think Juwan is going to play, which, speaking of Juwan, that pay raise seemed a little disrespectful. The dude he has to earn it too. He didn't just give him it. So and then James is saying in the chat, CMC just made the injury report. No shocker there. I mean, remember, let's remember week 1 last year, dude. I mean, people thought he was going to play on Monday Night Football, and it didn't come out until like the day of that he wasn't going to play, and he ended up being out most of the year. So It's
Uh,
so injuries in the Niners offense is one of the things I'm looking at. I think the offense has a ton of potential, obviously, with the playmakers, Brock Purdy and Shanahan. So I think they'll overall, if they're healthy, will be good on the year. And then Darnold for the Seahawks, man. Like, listen, Darnold, we have a lot of bad Darnold on tape, like a lot of really bad Darnold on tape. And then we have about 14, 15 weeks of good Darnold last year on tape, and then it completely fell off. So does he continue more of the fall off, or is he saved? Is his career completely revitalized? Who knows? We'll have to see in this new system. I will say, I think overall the Seahawks team offensively is not as good as the Vikings. So that's another aspect of this. Can Darnold look good with less or a lesser supporting cast?
Yeah, that is the thing to keep an eye on for sure. And James is right. It literally is 14 minutes ago, this article was published that Christian McCaffrey limited with calf issue. And I think he's
Oh
lingered with calf
no.
issues in the past. So,
Oh no.
yep, classic moment there. Yeah, these division matchups between these two are always a ton of fun.
Yeah.
San Fran did take this in Seattle last year. But yeah, focusing on the Darnold side, I saw somebody tweet, they were like that, or it was a clip, maybe it was like a reel that was, sometimes that number 3 overall demon just comes out of Sam Darnold.
Yeah. I
And
saw
man,
that
if you
too.
watch
Oh,
his
it's
high end
beautiful.
play only, you'd think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He makes some
Yeah.
absurd throws. And you're right. This offensive line is not as good. Gray Zabel coming in will hopefully fix the interior, but the interior is the biggest question. And that
Mhm.
is the pressure that tore him apart last year. We talked about it a lot this offseason. But in the games against the Rams, especially the playoff game, that interior pressure is what kind of breaks him. So that interior is going to have to hold up for him. And yeah, the new pass catchers in town. DK is gone. JSN is now wide receiver 1. Torrey Horton is, I think, projected to kind of start alongside Cooper Kupp in the slot. So, and then, adding Elijah Aurora as well, seeing how much he gets to play. But the offense is going to be interesting. And I will say it's also worth noting the Seahawks looked pretty good in preseason. I think Mike McDonald may just be setting himself up to be one of the better coaches in the NFL,
Yeah.
especially with the defense that was clicking at the end of last year.
I do. Yeah, I am high on the Seattle defense. I think Seattle's defense is going to be a great unit with Mike McDonald. And with CMC on the injury report, man, now I'm less confident in the Niners, dude, because that's really been the story of the Niners last 5 years is when they have their playmakers, they are clicking, but when they don't, they are not. And without Ayuk and CMC, and this Seattle defense that looks good on paper, it looks good from a coaching perspective. That could be a matchup to watch in this game, especially at Seattle.
Yeah, and I may be switching my pick on a fly here. We'll see. But one of the things that may help is that the interior pass rush for the 49ers is not great. And we'll see if the two
There's
rookies
question
and
marks.
Alfred.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Rookies.
If CJ West, if they're playing, or if it's Jordan
Yeah.
Elliott, and then Michael Williams on the outside. So this could be an interesting matchup here. Some turnover on defense for the 49ers in general with Charvarius Ward leaving and Hufanga leaving. So yeah, offensively, I feel better, right? The 49ers offense really has no excuse to not still be pretty good. You moved on from Debo, but it's time for these other guys to step up. Ayuk, though, being the kind of question mark there a little bit in terms of health. But yeah, this is an interesting matchup. Where are you going? 2.5, 3-point favorites on the road in Seattle.
Shocked. I was shocked by the line. Frankly, I thought this would be a pick 'em, especially at Seattle. Because this means on a neutral, what they have this at like close to 4.5, 5 points for the Niners. I don't think it's that big of a difference. I got Seattle covering. I don't know who's going to win the game. That's a toss up to me, but I got Seattle covering the 2.5.
I changed it on the fly for 2 reasons. One, the McCaffrey thing is interesting, and then 2, this is a predicting take for me. Where if the Seahawks manage to win this game, there's your takes of Darnold being perfectly fine, even though the last 2 times we saw him, he was bad.
Dude.
So there's one of the takes prediction for you: Seahawks cover or win, and the Darnold takes begin.
This does feel like a takey game. If Darnold looks awful, man, people are going to be calling for his head.
Yeah, either way, yeah, it's going to be he either looks good or bad. It's going to be the overreaction in either direction. But yeah, it's going to be really rough if he looks bad, then it's going to be
True.
immediate.
Dude, honestly, if he looks bad, I might buy into some of the takes. Let's just,
I mean, look at that.
Frankly,
James also in chat.
Wow,
The
so
sleeper
it's
ones
moving.
lock in on Tuesday for reference for our lines. But yeah, so it literally moved because of the news for CMC. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man.
All right. Got a few more here to get through before game starts. We're going to try our best. Lions, Packers. Yeah, Lions, Packers. Another fantastic matchup to start.
It is.
It's unfortunate this isn't a primetime game, to be honest.
I know, man. I know. Honestly, this is a fun thing. I wanted to say this at the top of the show. NFL slate is so awesome, man. There's so many great games on an NFL slate, including this one, dude. Listen, every game is important, but some games feel a little bit more important, and this one feels like, okay, this could be a game we look at down the line and say, oh, this decided the division, or this was a big crucial moment in the season for one of these teams. And I'm honestly shocked to see the Lions are underdogs in this. But listen, I mean, you got add Micah Parsons to the Packers. It's one of the newest and biggest now offseason storylines. How does Micah change the outlook of this team and this defense in particular? And then I'm looking at Jordan Love, man, because I'm intrigued with Jordan Love just because he started off as a starter, as like looking like the next elite guy. He did. And then last season, and at the end of his first season as a starter, he started to fall off a bit. But I do think I'm still pretty high on Love, and I think he can be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see that. Interested to see Matthew Golden in his debut. How much of a role is he going to have? Is he going to be a kind of guy that they want to get the ball in his hands early if they believe in him in that kind of way? And then the Ben Johnson-less Lions, right? The Ben Johnson-less Lions. How does that hurt the Lions offense? Do they take a step back? My prediction, is no. I think they'll be fine. Frankly, I just think they have such a good unit as far as personnel is concerned that I think they'll be okay. But yeah, that's just a few of the things I'm looking for in this game.
Yeah, it's worth noting the Lions did win this game in Green Bay last year by 10. They swept the series as well because it was kind of
the game that was raining a ton too.
I think so.
Vaguely remembering that.
Yeah. And it's kind of the kryptonite for the Packers last year was playing the top end teams. They only lost to the teams that were basically competing for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. So yeah, Jordan Love watch is on. I've been high on him, but he's curious who does, and I've referenced it an hour and a half ago now that he did have an injury in that Brazil game to start last year that I do think lingered with him for most of the season. So his health was in question. Can use it as an excuse some, but now there is no excuse. So you got to get it together. And yeah, so that's something we're watching. And then for the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson back. That'll be huge for them. Getting their pass rush, Tyreek coming out there as a rookie to add some aggression on that defensive front. But yeah, offensively, it's interesting because Goff he's been fortunate to play for some of the best offensive-minded coaches in the NFL with McVay and now Ben Johnson. So it is curious to see how he does with the next guy. Because I just got done hyping him up on our quarterback rankings video. I had him at 6.
You believe in Goff, man. You're a Goff believer.
I believe in Goff. And so I'd be curious to see how the offense looks without the Ben Johnson element. And yeah, the Packers defense now with Micah is going to be an interesting one. Because now, one of the things I pointed out earlier on was my concern with that secondary. And it still is a concern in terms of their ability to go deep into the playoffs. But adding Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary now being your number 2 helps alleviate that a ton.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, just the power of having to – I mean, Rashawn Gary is a number 1 type pass rusher. Like, he's a guy, that the Packers have relied on that the last few years from Rashawn Gary. So now he doesn't get to have all the attention because that's going to go towards Micah Parsons. I mean, that could be lethal. That could be a lethal duo. And I think completely changes the outlook of the defense, man. It really does. Because now the secondaries, it's not as much as a concern when you have guys that are likely going to be getting pressure every other play. And And so that's fascinating to watch. And then, yeah, also, I mean, like, because this feels like a type of game too. Now, if this was in Detroit in a dome, I think this definitely would be the case. But this is also a game that I feel like could be a shootout too, man. I think I'm pretty
Yeah.
high on both of these offenses. So yeah, and I think, listen, I picked the Packers to win the division, man. This is a game that's gonna have massive division implications, because if the Packers don't win the division, I think it's gonna be the Lions. So
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. The over-under on this is 47.5, which I do feel like is a little low. One of their games last year was a bit lower scoring, but I think you're right, and it was in the rain. The other one was like 34-31. That was in Detroit.
see, yeah,
James
that
pointing
dome
out,
game.
is Micah, domes, man. Is Micah a full go or limited snaps, which is a very good question, because, found out that the back injury was real.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
out there working, but he does have a week to learn. Fortunately,
There's
learning
not
a
much
defensive
to learn
system.
as an edge rusher.
Yeah, I mean, it's
just go
the
get
lingo.
quarterback, man.
Yeah, it's just, are you stunting? Are you not?
Yeah,
Setting the edge, but I think he'll play. I would be shocked if he played less than like 75%, to be honest. I would expect 75% to be kind of the mark. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, and where are you going? Packers by a field goal at home here is interesting. I do think this one
shocked
moved
by that.
after the Micah trade, for what it's worth. I think this
Makes
was a point and a
sense.
half when I originally saw it. Yeah.
It makes sense. And if anyone has the offensive line to slow down this pass rush, it is the Lions, with Penasel and Decker as their two tackles. They have a phenomenal offensive line, but they do have the question of the interior, so that is going to be something to look out for as well. But yeah, I took the Lions, man. I mean, listen, the Lions won this division last year, and I'm still really high on the Lions. So giving the Lions points in really any game, I'm going to be probably leaning towards them to cover.
This is another take one for me that I'm predicting. I'm taking the Lions as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Here's
takes
the two
out of this
takes.
game.
Oh yeah, the two takes is Ben Johnson. Who? We don't
Yep.
need him. Doesn't
Yep.
matter. He's a bum. And then the Packers is going to be Skip Bayless running. He's going to be in his car or
Listen.
burning.
Yep.
He's going to
Yep.
go wild on the Micah Parsons stuff if
If-
the Packers lose this game.
Or if Micah, even if they win this game, if Micah doesn't have a sack, because
Have a sack.
that's all the shouty shows
That's all.
care about.
He's
is
not
sacks.
watching the game yet.
Exactly. It's all they care about. So even if Micah has 7 pressures, they don't care unless he gets a sack. So if he doesn't get a sack in this game, all of a sudden Skip and some dumb Cowboys fans, we have a smart Cowboys fan in the chat that knows better, but dumb Cowboys fans are gonna be like, we don't need Micah. Look, he can't even get a sack week 1.
Can't even get a sack week 1. And Marshawn Nealon did. So tonight.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to the last 4 o'clock game. And the other one, when I referenced earlier, this is the only other cross-conference matchup. Texans at Rams, which is an interesting matchup.
It is.
Matt Stafford's back. Speaking of back injuries.
True. The back for Stafford's going to be the thing, but dude, talk about a discrepancy. This is the first matchup discrepancy that I look at on paper that I'm like, this could just change the game. It's the Rams defensive line versus the rebuilt Texans offensive line. This could completely change the complexion of that game. The Rams defensive line has the potential to be top 3 in the league. That's how good it is. And this Texas offensive line, dude, if you told me going into the season that they're going to be the worst at the end of it, I would totally believe you, because that's what it looks like on paper. It looks absolutely awful on paper. Now it was really bad last year. So, I mean, can they get much worse than that? When you trade away your best offensive lineman and one of the best left tackle in the league, yes, I think it can get worse. So that's the matchup I've got circled. And then of course Stafford's back, because I think if Stafford's back's good, this offense has, it has Super Bowl contender potential, with the weapons it has on it, and high-end Stafford. I mean, we know that Stafford can play high-end football at any given moment, any given week. So, see how that Stafford back looks.
Yeah, this is one of those we talked about earlier, where it's the good matchups to kind of figure it out. This is the opposite of that, right? This is kind of the Cam Ward one to me, where, man, this is not the defensive front you want to be going against week 1 right out of the gate with this rebuilt offensive line with, Ariante Ursary, their second-round pick, who was really their first pick, after trading back in the draft, is slated to start at left tackle. They also have Christian Kirk, who's injured, so Jaden Higgins was already projected to start as a rookie, but now they may have Jalen Knoll, other rookie. The Iowa State boys may both be starting out there. So, man, I love CJ Stroud too, and it's tough to I mean, we're starting to get into some territory already of like, not Andrew Luck quite, but like, with even Joe Burrow, where it's at what point, man, do you got to protect your franchise quarterback, and they've not invested a ton there yet. And I'm curious to see how this offensive line looks against what will probably be one of the best defensive fronts in the entire NFL. And Jared Verse, who's primed for, a defensive player of the year type of season after how he looked as a rookie. So, with Kobe Turner and the other guys in the interior there, that to me wreaks havoc for this Texans.
It's hard because
it looks rough.
It does. Like I said, it looks like one of the biggest discrepancy of matchups between units in week 1.
For sure. And then defensively, this is where the saving grace could be, is if Stafford's health, this offense is pretty loaded now, though, with, Puka and Devontae. Offensively, they're looking solid. But the Texans defense has the potential to be top 5 this year.
It does.
They're going to be good. So this could also just be a very gritty game where defense kind of dominates it. And yeah, James saying Rams defense will go crazy, hard to pick against McVay. That is also true. He is one of the best coaches in the NFL. So with that in mind, the 3.5-point favorites at home here. Where you going?
I've got the Rams, man. Like I said, I looked at that matchup on paper between the two lines, and I said, I think that's going to be the deciding factor, even though I do still believe in the Texans. I think they'll win the division, but I think that's just too much to overcome for that rebuilt offensive line.
I agree. I think it's a game where you don't have to ask Stafford to do much to win this game, because I think the defense could win this game 14-10. Like it could be that type of game, to be honest. So I like the Rams as well. All right, 2 games left.
Let's
Done with
go.
The 4:00 slate. One of the best matchups of the weekend, which we've already talked about how many good ones there are, but rematch of a playoff game. Ravens at Bills for first Sunday night football game of the season.
This is what makes the season special, man. When you get these AFC championship-like matchups in week 1, it's phenomenal. It's the matchup of the week, and that's why it's on Sunday Night Football. The matchup of the 2 MVPs, very debated the last couple of years who should have won MVP between these 2 quarterbacks. It's a fun one, dude. They're both going to be really good teams. Like, shocker, it's the Bills and Ravens. But I'm looking specifically at the Ravens defense, man. The Ravens defense is the unit that I'm like, okay, this could be what propels them to that first Lombardi trophy that they've been after since Lamar has been drafted there. So, because I think that's one of the best units in the NFL. I think the Ravens probably have the best overall roster in the NFL as well. Gotta D-Hen watch once again, the ageless wonder that is Derrick Henry. Does he fall off at all? That's a question mark coming into the season. I don't think so. It's like one of those things, like you say all the time, I got to see it first before I say it. I think he'll be just fine. And then Josh Allen, man, it feels like with Hard Knocks and everything, it just feels like it's the Bills' year to me. It really does. He obviously, I mean, with Josh Allen, they're in every single game, no matter what the circumstances are. I am intrigued with their secondary, the Bills secondary. That's one question mark I have, just because of the injuries. They have a couple guys out right now. Maxwell Harrison and Tre'Davious White are both dealing with injuries. So that's a potential unit that teams like Baltimore will be able to exploit. But outside of that, man, there's really not a ton of question marks with either of these teams.
And they're 2 of the rosters, when we're talking about a lot of these teams, that did not change a ton over last year. There wasn't a lot of drop-off. All they did was add some depth through the draft. And the Bills going and getting Josh Palmer as well to add to their receiving room. This is going to be a fun game, man. This is going to be so much fun, and it's hard to overrate a week 1 game, but this is going to have massive implications in week 16 and week 17 when we're looking at who's trying to fight for that number 1 seed.
Yep.
Specifically for the Ravens, they need this game. The schedules for these 2 teams after this game is night and day different. The Ravens follow up this game by playing all playoff teams. They get the Browns next, then they get the Lions, the Chiefs, the Texans, and the Rams all in a row to start the season. Well, the Bills will get some divisional matchups against the Jets and Dolphins. It is. And the Bills get Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots. So this could be a massive game in terms of determining what the outlook looks like for the number one overall seed or seeding in general, because these are two teams that have the same goal at the end of the year as obviously win a Super Bowl, but it's also to get over the Kansas City Chiefs hump.
Exactly.
And this matchup is massive for that. The playoff game was epic. I think a lot of fans would agree that this is a rematch of the AFC Championship game. A lot of people would sign up for that because Lamar versus Josh Allen is always electric. Two of the most exciting quarterbacks in the entire NFL that can take games over at any moment. So this is going to be a fun one, man. This is going to be a fun one.
One of the high-level storylines I'm looking at, dude, is the Ravens are so good against elite teams in the regular season. That's why it's always been so confusing why they can't have success in the playoffs. They do really good against teams like the Bills in the regular season, and they show up for games like this. Like I believe the Ravens blew out the Lions the last couple of years. They beat the 49ers a couple of years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, and then they beat the Bills in the regular season as well in some of their matchups. So, and I also think the Ravens have a chip on their shoulder after how that game ended in January. And I think they play really well under those circumstances. So that's something I'm looking at. But I mean, to your point with the schedules, which is intriguing, the Bills can afford to lose this one. The Bills can afford to lose it. It sounds like the Ravens, this is if they want to have the potential number one seed, which, I think the number one seed now is even more valuable than it was after the playoff changes, because it's the only team to get that bye week, and that bye week is really, really valuable. So, but yeah, it's like you said, man, it's such an electric quarterback matchup. There's going to be a lot of crucial fourth downs in this game that could end up deciding it. And it's who can stop the unstoppable force on fourth down in those moments. Yeah. Which, really, if you keep the ball in those guys' hands, it's pretty much guaranteed first down. But it's then it comes down to, okay, then we're going to have another situation where it's like a Mark Andrews mistake that can potentially decide a game, somebody outside of these quarterbacks. So that's probably how it ends up playing out. It comes down to the wire, and then, somebody outside of the two greats at quarterback make a mistake and ends up hurting the losing team.
Definitely. James saying defense will be the difference for Ravens as far as superior. The Bills defense always seems to, I saw that Jalen Carter. Yeah, this is the wildest start to this game. Pretty sure dude tore his ACL on the opening kickoff, and now Jalen Carter has gotten an unsportsmanlike conduct, and I think he may have also gotten ejected. So
for trying to fight the entire Cowboys
before they've even run a play, he probably just went over there and was like, "We're Super Bowl champs," and yeah, what a wild start, But yeah, one thing that I'll be paying attention to for them as well is both of these teams did add a lot defensively through the draft. I think that they both think offensively, we've shown we can do it. We just need our defense to get more stops. If we can just build a defense, and especially after watching what the Eagles just did to the Chiefs, if we can replicate that, then we're good. So both of them attack the defensive line in a way. Adding TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, and Landon Jackson for the Bills. So be curious to see how much playing time they all get. And then my defensive rookie of the year pick and Mike Green. Can he make an impact right out of the gate? So
intrigued with adding Mike Green to that Ravens defense, man, because that's really what's been missing for that defense is an elite pass rusher. And if they stole that in the second round, it could be the difference this year.
Wow, that guy suffered a season-ending knee injury last year, and I think it just happened again on the first play. So,
man,
that's a bummer.
Weird start to football.
It really is, man. All right, Bills by 1.5 here at home. Where are you going?
Listen, for context, for Bills Mafia, I'm picking the Bills to win it all, but I'm picking the Ravens to cover in this game. I think the Ravens show up for these regular season games like no other elite team does in the league, and I think they'll cover and win.
This is fascinating because your Super Bowl picks the Bills. My Super Bowl picks the Ravens. I'm taking the Bills. Wow, so after everything I said, and how crucial this game could be to them getting the number one seed as well, but yeah, I'm taking the Bills by 1.5 here.
It's also one of those things where I know I'm going to pick the Bills in the playoffs, and you're going to pick the Ravens in the playoffs, and I just don't see one of these teams beating each other twice. That just seems very unlikely. So.
And it's a bit of a revenge game for the Ravens specifically as well. I think they do have a bit more of an edge on that sense, but I like the Bills at home. I'm just taking the home aspect here a little bit. All right, let's wrap things up, man. Get football
Monday
started.
Night Football.
I want to neglect the last game, but this is another divisional matchup in week 1 that is fascinating. We get really year 1 JJ McCarthy, who's it's almost like the NBA's version of a rookie after the injury last year, but he has a year in the system going against year 2 of Caleb Williams under the regime of Ben Johnson.
Yeah, man. It's the storyline in this game is the quarterbacks. I mean, it's the first year of JJ McCarthy. How can he look in that KOC offense with all those weapons? And then Caleb Williams. Can Ben Johnson, quote, save Caleb Williams, if you will? Because it feels like that's how a lot of people feel about Caleb right now, that he needs saving. So, and you know, I don't know. That's the fun thing. I really don't know how they're going to look. I think Caleb in this Bears offense is going to look good right out the gate. That's just my feeling. Because they have, I mean, speaking of the Vikings weapons, the Bears also have a lot of weapons of their own, man. A lot of intriguing pass catchers. Year 2 of Roma Dunze, and then of course the rookie Luther Burden. So that's going to be intriguing. And then defensively as well for the Vikings. The Vikings have like really went all in on pass rush in this past offseason cycle. So it's going to be curious to see if they do a little bit more sending forward and less blitzing that Brian Flores loves to do. That's going to be intriguing to watch. But this is another one, dude. Another one, speaking to kind of we've talked about throughout the show here. This has takes written all over it, dude. It has takes written all over it. I mean, whether Caleb's good or bad or JJ McCarthy's good or bad, we're going to see a lot of hot takes out of this game.
Absolutely, and I'll touch on that when I get to my pick, because I flip back and forth on this one a lot. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see JJ McCarthy, man. I'm ready to see it. I didn't want to overhype the one video I saw, but man, the anticipation he was already working on with his receivers and practice is huge, and that is how you win in the NFL. If you can throw your guys open and throw before they even make their break. I mean, Peyton made a living off of that because he didn't have the arm. If you don't have the arm, and I think JJ has a better arm than Peyton did, that's how you can elevate your game. So this offense, I expect it to be clicking again. KOC has proven his baseline is elite. Whatever's at quarterback with these skill players, especially, it is going to be an offense that can produce. And then defensively, Grenard and Van Ginkel were actually a pretty underrated pass rushing duo last year, and a part of that is due to the Flores scheme and his ability to sim that pressure and get guys into situations to make a play. But I'd be curious to see, because again, it's fascinating. The Vikings defense on paper doesn't like scream to me, but Brian Flores does. And the interesting thing in this is that in the 2 matchups last year, Cowboys shocking the world immediately with a touchdown. But Caleb against Brian Flores last year did have one of his best games of the entire season in their first matchup. So that's something to watch is and with the rebuilt offensive line, how they handle that is going to be fascinating to watch. And then the Bears defense, because defensively, there's still a little bit to be left desired on the defensive side for the Bears in terms of a pass rush. And can they take advantage of that against the Vikings offense here? So call the game now for James. Call it. Stop the count.
Oh man. Yeah. This is going to be a fun one, man. This is going to be a fun one. And we need more data points from Caleb Williams. We need JJ McCarthy data points at all. I think, listen, I won't agree with the takes out of the game, but I think this is an important one, right? We will know a lot more about these young quarterbacks after this Monday night game.
And Adam Thielen will be starting because Jordan Addison is suspended, for those that don't know that. So he will be missing from this game. So Adam Thielen will be returning and getting playing time immediately. So this is going to be a fascinating one. And where are you going here? Vikings by 1.5 on the road here in Chicago.
I took the Vikings since I think they have the better overall roster. I think that's pretty clear. The question is going to be quarterback. So giving them points, I kind of like that. But I don't feel good about this pick at all. This is one I went back and forth on.
Yeah, I've literally switched it just from sitting here, but I went the Bears. And my reasoning was just Caleb being able to handle Brian Flores once tells me you could do it again. And now the offensive line should be good. So if they can just mitigate the pressure that he adds, I think they could I think they could take control offensively here with the skill guys that they have. And then, I'll be curious to see what JJ looks like in his first start. But yeah, takes wise, predictions here is if the Bears lose and the Lions win, that Ben Johnson who thing is going to be the loudest thing out there. Probably people are going to be acting like the dude's a bum, shouldn't have been hired as head coach. And if JJ wins this and Caleb loses, that'll also be fun. Whichever quarterback wins this, but more than likely, if Caleb loses this game to JJ McCarthy, there's going to be some take.
Oh yeah. Caleb's a bust, and he needs to be benched. And for old Tyson Bagent, it's going to be bad.
Get him out there.
Avoid it if you can, people.
All right, man, we did it. Our first run through all 16 games reviewed. Appreciate everybody that tuned in live to this. Thanks for the chat. Thanks, James, for being a chatter down there. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate all the support from everybody. And would love the continued support. So, appreciate it if you guys could like the video, if you've watched it, and subscribe. We've been getting a lot of views on some stuff lately, but not as many subs. So, please hit that sub button. Hit the sub button. We appreciate that. And then, our schedule going forward, we will be live roughly at 7-ish on Sunday. I expect the reviews to be a little bit quicker, hypothetically, because, the games that aren't as close, we probably won't spend quite as much time on. But this will be our schedule going forward. So look for us every Thursday night. May end up being closer to 6 or 6:30. We'll update our banner if we need to, because this did take a while. But Sundays will probably be around closer 6:45, 7-ish, leading you into Sunday Night Football. So we'll let everybody get to Thursday Night Football that are watching this live.
Yes, sir.
And then everybody that tuned in, we appreciate all the support. But until next time.
Thanks for talking ball with us.